I never thought my small backyard garden would cause such chaos, but that's exactly what happened when Karen, the president of our HOA board, set her sights on me. My garden wasn't extravagant, just a collection of roses, tomatoes, peppers, and a small corner filled with lavender that gave the whole yard a calming fragrance. Neighbors often complimented it, and some even stopped by to ask for cuttings or gardening tips. It was my pride and joy. One ordinary afternoon, I returned from work and found a bright orange envelope stuck to my front door. Inside was a formal notice of violation. According to Karen, my garden was in direct violation of HOA guidelines, which she claimed prohibited unauthorized modifications of landscaping. At the bottom of the letter was a fine, $5,000 due within 30 days. I couldn't believe it. My first reaction was shock, then anger. I had read the HOA guidelines multiple times before starting my garden. They clearly stated that homeowners were free to grow flowers, vegetables, or shrubs, provided they didn't obstruct sidewalks or pose safety hazards. My garden was neatly maintained, fully within my yard, and far from any walkway. When I asked my neighbors, many of them were equally baffled. Karen just hates when people do things without her approval, one neighbor whispered. Another shook his head and said, "She fined me once for having a flagpole that was an inch taller than allowed. She gets power hungry." I decided not to panic but to fight. That same evening, I gathered every HOA document. I had and highlighted the section that allowed gardening. I took photos of my yard from every angle to prove nothing was out of order. Karen wasn't just mistaken. She was abusing her position. What bothered me most wasn't just the outrageous fine, but the arrogance in her letter. She ended it with a line that read, "Any failure to comply will result in further action, including legal pursuit." I knew this wasn't about rules, it was about control. Karen had been on the HOA board for years, and people said she loved flexing her authority. But this time, she had picked the wrong target. I wasn't about to hand over thousands of dollars for something I had every right to do. I went to bed that night angry but determined. Tomorrow, I told myself, would be the start of fighting back. The next morning, I drafted a formal letter disputing the violation. I cited the HOA's own bylaws, attached photos of my garden, and requested that the fine be rescinded immediately. I delivered copies to the HOA office and emailed the board members directly. Karen responded within hours, her tone sharp and dismissive. "Your interpretation of the guidelines is incorrect. This fine will stand. Failure to pay will escalate the matter." That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't going to back down easily. She thrived on intimidation. I needed a bigger strategy. I started by rallying support from my neighbors. To my surprise, almost everyone had a story about Karen's unreasonable enforcement. A retired veteran down the street said she fined him for parking his RV in his driveway overnight, even though the bylaws permitted temporary parking. Another family told me Karen once demanded they remove their children's swing set because it was an eyesore. Clearly, I wasn't alone. That gave me courage. I decided to request a special hearing with the HOA board to formally present my case. By rule, Karen couldn't block the request. At the same time, I filed a complaint with the state's HOA oversight agency, submitting all my documentation. Word spread quickly in the neighborhood. People were tired of Karen's power plays and they started to rally behind me. "If you speak up at the hearing, we'll come to support you," one neighbor promised. When the day of the hearing arrived, I walked into the HOA meeting room with a folder full of evidence and about 20 neighbors by my side. Karen sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, glaring at me as if I were an unruly child. But when the board secretary called the meeting to order, I stood tall and presented my case clearly. The bylaws allowed gardens. My garden complied with every rule. Karen's fine was arbitrary, excessive, and without legal basis. I showed the photos, the highlighted rules, and even emails where Karen contradicted the guidelines. My neighbors then spoke up, sharing their own experiences of unfair treatment. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One even whispered, "This isn't right." For the first time, Karen's authority was being openly challenged. By the end of the hearing, the board voted unanimously to dismiss the fine. Karen's face turned red with fury. She slammed her papers shut and stormed out of the room. But what I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of her downfall. After the hearing, life seemed to return to normal for me. My fine was gone and my garden stood untouched. But for Karen, the cracks in her authority were widening. Neighbors had seen her exposed and people started speaking out louder. Within a week, several families submitted formal complaints about her past behavior. The HOA board, embarrassed by the backlash at the hearing, had no choice but to investigate. A pattern quickly emerged: arbitrary fines, personal grudges, and decisions made without board approval. Karen tried to push back. She sent out emails painting herself as the victim, claiming that homeowners were disrespecting the rules and that she was simply maintaining order, but no one bought it. The community had had enough. One evening, while watering my roses, a neighbor walked over with a grin. "Did you hear? They're calling an emergency board meeting to discuss Karen's position." I hadn't expected things to escalate so quickly, but apparently the board was under immense pressure. People threatened to withhold dues if Karen remained in power. Others even suggested suing the HOA for harassment. At the emergency meeting, the room was packed. Karen tried to maintain her usual commanding tone, but the board members looked exhausted. They confronted her directly, listing the numerous complaints and reminding her that she had overstepped her authority countless times. "This community does not belong to you, Karen," one board member said firmly. "It belongs to everyone who lives here." Karen argued, shouted, and even tried to accuse me of rallying a mob against her. But her words fell flat. Too many people had first-hand experience of her tyranny. The final blow came when the board treasurer revealed something shocking. Karen had approved fines and collected money without properly documenting it in the HOA's financial records. While there was no evidence she kept the money herself, her sloppy handling was enough to strip her credibility. That night, the board voted. With a unanimous decision, Karen was removed as HOA president. The announcement was met with applause, cheers, and even tears from neighbors who had long felt trapped under her rule. Karen stormed out once again, but this time, she didn't return. For the first time in years, our neighborhood felt free, and my little garden had been the spark that lit the fire. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood transformed. Without Karen breathing down everyone's necks, people started enjoying their homes again. The family with the swing set put it back up. The veteran parked his RV proudly in his driveway. And my garden, it became a symbol of resistance. Neighbors would stop by and joke, "This is the garden that dethroned Karen." Kids came over to pick lavender sprigs, and one neighbor even suggested starting a community garden project. What once felt like a personal hobby had turned into something that brought people together. The new HOA board was careful to rebuild trust. They hosted open forums, actually listened to homeowners, and clarified rules in plain language. The oppressive atmosphere Karen had created was gone, replaced with cooperation. As for Karen, she vanished from community meetings. Rumors spread that she was trying to sell her house, embarrassed by how quickly she had fallen. Whether she stayed or left didn't matter. Her reign was over. Looking back, I realized something important. Karen's downfall wasn't just about my garden. It was about standing up to someone who abused power. Too often people stay quiet out of fear of conflict, but silence only enables bullies. The moment we spoke out together, she crumbled. One sunny morning, as I trimmed my roses, a neighbor said something that stuck with me. "You know, you didn't just save your garden, you saved this community." It felt good to hear, but I knew it wasn't just me. It was all of us finally saying enough was enough. Karen tried to fine me. $5,000 for something as simple as growing flowers and vegetables. Instead, she lost her position overnight. Now, every time I look at my garden, I don't just see plants. I see freedom, resilience, and a reminder that even the most ordinary person can stand up and make a difference. The garden that started as my private escape had grown into something much bigger, a garden of justice.